The motor car has influenced our modern era more than any other invention. There's no doubt that we're living in the age of the automobile, and the names of two men are inextricably linked to it. One is that of Karl Benz, a mechanical engineer in Mannheim, southern Germany, who realized his dream of combining an engine and a chassis to produce a powered vehicle. His motor velocipede, the world's first motor car, was patented in 1886. The other figure was Gottlieb Daimler from Stuttgart, Germany. He had the vision of designing a fast-running engine for powering vehicles of all kinds, on land, on water and in the air. Daimler's four-stroke gas engine was also patented in 1886. Amazingly, the two pioneers of the motor car never met, even though they lived barely 130 kilometers away from each other and worked on their inventions at the same time, each in his own way. The breakthrough of the self-propelled vehicle, the automobile, is their achievement. Yet others had had the idea before them. Wind carriages fitted with sails were designed to be propelled forwards by the power of the wind. Prior to these 15th and 16th century devices, there were plans for muscle power vehicles propelled by people pedalling inside. It wasn't until the 18th century that a passively transportable source of propulsion appeared in the form of the steam engine. Nicolas Cugnot built the first steam-powered vehicle, a monster conceived as a means of transport for France's glorious army. The test drive ended somewhat less gloriously. A few years later, smaller engines appeared which burnt gas, atmospheric engines. In 1860, Etienne Lenoir from Paris designed an atmospheric engine with two pistons in one cylinder. The first practicable internal combustion engine is even said to have survived a trip to the outskirts of Paris. Nicolaus August Otto added a fourth stroke to the three in the engine designed by Lenoir. To intake, combustion and exhaust, Otto added a compression stroke. Four-stroke principle was a success. In 1876, Otto's stationary single-cylinder engine produced 3 horsepower at a speed of 200 revolutions per minute, roughly 3 times the output of the engines designed by Etienne Lenoir. Otto's Deutz gas engine factory in Cologne became Europe's biggest manufacturer of 4-stroke engines, yet they still only functioned in a stationary position. Gottlieb Daimler, at the time a member of the board at Deutz, was also involved in the development of the 4-stroke engine. He was assisted by a highly talented engineer called Wilhelm Maybach. Maybach and Daimler realized that the 4-stroke engine was the long sought-after source of propulsion for vehicles. Otto's 4-stroke principle was one of the discoveries of the century. Downward motion of the piston creates negative pressure in the cylinder. As a result, a mixture of air and fuel is drawn in through an inlet. As the piston moves back upwards, it compresses the mixture, which is then ignited. The explosion forces the piston downwards again. The piston now performs work. It turns the crankshaft 1 revolution. On the final stroke, the waste gases are expelled. (1883). 12 months previously, Daimler had left the Deutz gas engine factory to set up in business on his own in Stuttgart. Daimler invested his entire fortune in pursuing one goal. He wanted to make the 4-stroke engine lighter and more compact for mobile use. To increase the specific engine output as well, instead of gas, Daimler used liquid fuel and a new hot tube ignition. This gave his relatively small engine an output of 1 horsepower. The petrol was atomized in a surface carburettor and mixed with air before being compressed in the cylinder and combusted. Despite what many a person at the time thought, in 1885 it wasn't the devil who was making Stuttgart's vineyards unsafe, but Gottlieb Daimler with his motorized horse carriage. In Mannheim, at roughly the same time, Carl Benz had almost completed his technological masterpiece, without having even the slightest notion of Daimler's work. Benz also improved the four-stroke internal combustion engine, but in contrast to Daimler, he employed an electrical buzzer ignition which used a sparking plug and enabled an impressive engine speed to be attained. In July 1886, Benz test drove his three-wheeled vehicle for the first time. With an elegant, lightweight tubular steel frame, it was far more than just a horseless carriage. This was the world's first real motor car. The moment it was completed, this prototype was ready for series production. A brilliant achievement by Carl Benz. In late 1887, his Mannheim engine factory began manufacturing motor cars. In Stuttgart, Daimler followed suit a short time later. He too had a motor car in his production program. The antiquated-looking wooden motor carriage was clearly derived from the horse-drawn carriage. It was driven by a 1.1 horsepower engine mounted in front of the rear axle. Four-wheeler appeared in 1893. Named the Victoria, it developed a whole 3 horsepower. But in Germany at the time, hardly anyone was impressed. Customers were few and far between. Motoring was regarded as unseemly. France, however, was quite a different story. There, Benz and Daimler recorded impressive sales. The world's first car race took place, from Paris to Bordeaux and back. Steam engines also took part, but they were totally outclassed by the new petrol engine vehicles. The winner over the 1,200-kilometre distance was a car powered by a Daimler engine. In 1890, Peugeot in France became the world's 3rd car manufacturer. It was quickly followed worldwide by other vehicle producers, many of whose names are virtually unknown today. By now, the clanking motor car had become socially acceptable in Germany, too. Even His Imperial Majesty Kaiser Wilhelm II deigned to turn up in a motor car to inspect his troops. But if anyone deserved to be called the car king, it was Henry Ford in America. Ford, who employed thousands of workers at his Detroit plant, revolutionized car production. Comprising some 5,000 individual parts, at the turn of the century the motor car was one of the most complex of all industrial products. It was still manufactured largely in workshop style, but the growing market called for more economical production methods. In 1913, Henry Ford introduced the assembly line for manufacturing his Model T. The effect was dramatic. Ford was able to reduce by 80% the time taken to assemble a chassis with axles, springs and engine. Ford's assembly line production made cars cheaper and sales rocketed. You no longer needed to be royalty to own a car, but those who did own one felt like royalty. By the time World War I broke out, the motor car had become much lower and more elongated in appearance. The standard open version predominated. It had the engine at the front and the drive at the rear. But things changed as designers experimented with various possibilities. With some models, the drive was shifted from the rear to the front axle. This resulted in a favourable load being placed on the driving wheels by the weight of the engine, and especially in the case of the transverse engine, saved a tremendous amount of space. Even though cars were gradually becoming more and more stylish, the original principle developed by Daimler and Benz remained virtually unchanged. One principal change came in the 50s when frame construction gave way to integral body construction. Certain parts of the sheet metal body were designed as supporting elements and the engine and the chassis attached directly to the body. Since then, millions of cars have been built in this way. "30 years after its birth, the motor car had fundamentally changed everyday life in a way its inventors could never have imagined. The motor car, a dream of the age, but a dream by no means everyone could turn into reality. An office worker could scarcely afford to buy even a middle-class vehicle. Ferdinand Porsche set out to design the car for everyone. Commissioned with the task by Adolf Hitler, in the 1930s he developed the People's Car. It was to cost just 990 marks. Millions of people invested their hard-earned savings in the construction of the People's Car plant in Wolfsburg, but they never got the car Hitler had promised them. It was only after the war that the Germans motored into their economic miracle with the People's Car, and on holiday too, preferably to Italy. The Volkswagen, a symbol of West Germany's economic miracle. The age of mass motorization began, and it gave rise to totally new challenges. The safety of a car's occupants became one of the most important design features. The latest safety concept is the airbag, which inflates at lightning speed to protect front seat passengers in the event of a crash. Like the ABS system, which stops the wheels locking when the brakes are applied, it relies on modern electronic systems. These also control exhaust gas purification, the catalytic converter, and the combustion processes in the engine to ensure as pollution-free running as possible. With the Earth's oil reserves limited, research into new propulsion systems is being stepped up, but electric propulsion is still not contested. As far as hydrogen propulsion is concerned, practical problems such as filling the tanks still have to be solved. There's an urgent need for solutions. With over 400 million cars on the roads worldwide, the burden on the environment from noise, pollution and energy consumption is becoming more and more serious. How much easier motoring was for our grandfathers. They were able to experience driving as sheer fun at a time when the firms of the two inventors of the motor car, Daimler and Benz, were merging to create an automobile company which today is one of the biggest in the world.